This is Joe.
What's up, Jeff?
Not much, not much. This is my little video podcast talking to people who are smarter than me, meaning people who have a deep and profound understanding that I don't have, and maybe the people that we're talking to don't. I come from the world of recruiting with Talent Reach, which is a small boutique, Seattle-based recruiting firm. I talk to sales leaders about things like what's happening in tech, what's going on with the hiring marketplace, how do we keep people around, and our goal is to make sure that people are doing their best to keep A players in their team on their team and recruit smart, as well as reduce the risk that goes along with that. So I get to talk to people like Mark, who is CRO over at Catalyst, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about how specifically the customer success piece of sales really ties into some of these issues. So, Mark, give us a quick sort of 30 seconds about you, who you are. Be happy to promote Catalyst in any way you'd like, and along the way as well.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah. Mark Kosoglow. Honestly, I'm just a sales guy with a fancy title. I've been selling for my entire career. I actually have a story that I started selling when I was 7 years old. And I'm lucky enough to have worked at Outreach as employee one all the way up to, 1,600 employees, 6,000 customers, $250 million in revenue. And have taken those learnings and all that great experience and gratitude for that situation, and have started a new role as the CRO of Catalyst. And Catalyst is a company that helps you make your customers a revenue growth engine. So that's what we're doing right now, man.
So it sounds very similar in purpose to what you were doing at Outreach, helping people on their teams grow revenue. Is that fair?
That is fair. It's actually the same journey, but from a different starting point. So at Outreach, when I joined, my knowledge of how to grow revenue had been beat into me by managers and leaders and everybody for so long, was that you start with the world of the universe of all people. And if you cold call them enough and email them enough, eventually you'll find people that have the problems that you solve, that like the way that you communicate, are on the channels that you communicate in, and you'll bring them into a funnel, and you work your sales process, and out the other end comes a customer that creates revenue. So that revenue journey I'm still on, but I'm doing it at a different starting point. I think that my time at Outreach, I learned that it's faster, it's cheaper, it's less risky to start revenue with your customers and then work back to revenue. And obviously you still have to acquire new customers. You have to start with the customer base to do that. But at some point, if your focus doesn't shift to your customers, then you're losing probably one of the best, cheapest, fastest forms of revenue that you can have. And as I was looking for my next place to land after Outreach, I was looking for a company that was going to lead the charge and empower this kind of new future that people are understanding. I mean, Jeff, I don't know if you know, but the subscription economy is only 20 years old. CSMs are only 20 years old. Data warehouses containing all this customer data and usage data are only a handful of years old. And that confluence of all of those three things is creating I think, something new in the market. And the reason I chose Catalyst is I think Catalyst is going to be one of the leaders that take us there. So yeah, same journey, just a different starting point.
Yeah, that's really, really fascinating. You touched on a couple things I think those of us who have been in sales for a long time know, but don't always do anything about, which is the brute force approach to prospecting and selling. And the fact that everybody would tell you absolutely that my best prospects are from my existing customers. Referrals are the greatest thing in the whole planet. Yet, talk a little bit about that disconnect, because you're 100% right. It's a relatively new industry.
Yeah. So I think where that can get muddy, Jeff, is that if you do a referral for the sake of a referral and the sake of revenue, you're probably not going to do it well, and it's not going to go well. When a referral is a byproduct of you creating moments of impact for your customer, that is meaningful value that your customers subscribe and credit to you, then the referrals will happen. And we all done that. We've all had like a great account that we did an awesome job selling, that we did an awesome job implementing, that are getting massive value. And they call you and they're like, hey, if you need a reference or you need somebody to talk to me, like, yo, hit me up. Like, I'm ready to chat. Like, we all have those, but what we don't do is we don't purposely create a journey to get to that. And so it happens on accident and it happens circumstantially versus as a byproduct of process. And that to me is kind of how I think you make a customer growth engine is you start with the fact that you can only make it a growth engine if you are consistently creating moments of impact that, create value that's meaningful to your customer, that they appreciate, and that they credit to you. Because if you don't tell them that you're helping them, they kind of forget.
That's right. And you've got a time window to take advantage of that. It sounds like that's exactly what Catalyst does.
Catalyst does do that. We have some unique features that help people understand through usage kind of what's going on and why, and then alert you when customers need help or when something's going really great, so that you can make sure that you leverage that into a growth situation, into a revenue generating situation. Jeff, I had this really awesome dude that worked for me at my job before Outreach, where I sold stuff to schools. I sold curriculum to schools. And his name was Peter. And Peter was this small, chunky Greek dude. And Peter was a man of the world, a man of the people. He was an awesome human being and just always cared for you. Like when I would do ride-alongs with him and in his car, he'd have like the little cooler packed for me that had snacks and nuts and water, just that type of dude. And we'd get into a school and he'd be like, hey, Betsy. And Betsy'd be like, do I know you? He's like, well, is your cousin the brother of the wrestling coach that won the national championship in 1972 that is married to this lady? God, yes. Oh, you see, blah, blah, blah. And, the next thing you know, he's built this great relationship because he was that type of person. But we have to remember in business, the point of a relationship isn't to be friends. It's to create a commercial opportunity. We have to cash in our relationship for a commercial gain. Otherwise, we're just creating friends, and nothing wrong with creating friends. We should all be doing that, but we got to remember at our jobs, we can create friends, but we have to do the other part. We have to commercialize the relationship. Otherwise, we're not doing what we need to do. And so, Peter was horrible at doing that. And it took years of coaching for him to like get out of like, hey, I can't just leave feeling good that I have a friend. I need to understand that my friends need to help me. And I think customers can kind of be the same way.
Interesting. So you've got a customer, but you got to make sure that they're not just friends. Because that happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. You described a thing that happens in sales a lot. It's like, well, because the flip side is salespeople don't want to be that guy.
That's right. And you know what? Like, if you're doing good by me, let's say that you mow my grass. Now, I might be the only CRO on the planet that actually mows his own grass because I like it. But like, let's say that you did mow my grass, or better yet, let's say that you shovel snow off of my driveway. I don't do that because I hate the cold. So if you do a good job for me and my neighbor needs help, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, hey, you need to call my snow shovel guy, right? And it's a natural extension of doing a great job and providing value that's, again, meaningful, because I can't get out of my house. I have a steep driveway unless it's done. So it's very meaningful. And I attribute it to him because I look out my window and I watch him do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's if you do that, your friends will become advocates, and advocates create additional revenue opportunity. But if you just leave it with the vibe of the relationship, then you're probably not going to get where you want to be, because you may not provide them value. You can be friends with somebody that doesn't provide you value. Right. So it needs to go deeper than friends.
For sure. Yeah. There's a skill and there's an art there as well. I think in terms of your team, you're growing revenue. Obviously you have probably an amazing team of customer support, customer service people. How do you bridge that gap to the sales side? How do you build the front end of your process so you have these amazing customers to wow?
Yeah, I think that when you start with the end in mind, to borrow Stephen Covey's 7 Habits principle, that you end up generating what you desire. And so if the end in mind is, I'm going to create customers with whom I can create moments of impact that they attribute value to me, and it's meaningful value. If you start with that, you can pull that thread all the way back to marketing, SDR land, in your sales process with AEs. And so, like, I'm currently doing that right now with Catalyst, where we're defining our 5 to 10 moments of impact that we can get to quickly, that provide huge value for our customers. And then we'll make sure we guide our customers to those moments of impact. If those moments of impact don't help them, they're probably not a good fit, right? And we should figure that out. Then we can pull that back to the SDRs and reach out in an outbound way to help people understand we can create value because of these moments of impact. And then we can pull that all the way through to marketing, and we can now market and brand and communicate with a wide net around the value we can create, because we know we can actually architect it because we have these moments of impacts figured out. And so to me, that's how you pull it into the sales thing, is you begin with the end in mind. Like, what can you actually do is pull that out. Now, that creates a trap, Jeff. If what you actually do, the market doesn't really care about, you're in trouble. And sell stuff that you can't actually do and still have a decent company, at least for in the short term, right? I don't know long term that works, but I would tell you that if you start with the end in mind and start with what your people want to do, I think you'll end up in a good place on the sales side too.
I want to dig into some of the recruiting / retention concepts here in a second, but I was interviewing Dr. Julie Pham last week, who does a lot of work in terms of culture and respect and things like that. And one of the interesting things she said, and not in a negative way at all, was that if your product's in the startup world not 100% baked, you really got to double down on the CS side of things, because that covers up. And again, not in a negative way, but it really covers up some of the failings that might come from a product that is going through some change. Do you resonate with that? Does Catalyst help with that? Like, does that help your growth engine to be able to have that as a bit of a crutch? Like you said a second ago, it's not a permanent solution, but
I think it does. It does help. So let me answer that by telling the story of Outreach, or at least part of it. Is, I joined Outreach.
Real quick, let me pause. Just give the 30-second. Not everybody knows about Outreach or what Outreach does, and it obviously dovetails nicely with what you're doing now.
Yeah. So Outreach is the #1 sales execution platform in the market. It's one of the fastest growing SaaS-based companies. Basically, what they do, they help make your sales team more efficient. They automate. They do a bunch of stuff that helps you create pipeline and then close it in a more efficient way. So in my journey at Outreach, I started with, it was me and the 4 co-founders, and we had no revenue, and we grew the business amazingly over the last 8 years. But we had 4 founders. One founder, Manny Medina, the current CEO, is an amazing business mind, an amazing motivator, like probably the most intelligent person I've ever met, super passionate, right? One co-founder, Andrew Kinzer, was kind of the intellectual, the deep thinker, like, let me explore all the options. Let me get in with my customers and really see what they want. Like, everything is a puzzle, and my job is to figure out as many pieces as I can put in there to make a complete picture as possible. And then we had 2 technical co-founders, Wes and Gordon, who did this unbelievable, awesome job at like building what Manny and Andrew kind of helped them figure out. Not that Wes and Gordon didn't have their own ideas, but like that was the general relationship. Andrew Kinzer, in the beginning, did every Salesforce integration for every single customer I signed, no matter the size. There were days where he would do like 30 meetings to help people integrate Salesforce. But being in the trenches, he figured out what was good and bad. And Wes and Gordon sat right next to him, and then they would iterate on this stuff, and it would get better, right? And, so he did that, and that was kind of his superpower. And so I think that, like, you got to get some people in there, and then you have to look at the different stages. And if you're architected your go-to-market process for these moments of impact, like, what is a high impact moment that your product could create if a couple things were better or fixed? Now go figure out what those couple things are by meeting with the people that aren't getting to that moment of impact, and then build them into the product. And so I think if you kind of create that loop of innovation, I think you really move a company forward at an accelerated rate versus you sitting in a room thinking about what you think your customers want.
Yeah. So execution as well as, iteration.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's listening, it's being curious, it's thinking that the problem is never quite solved. It's just in a state of pause while you figure out the next thing you need to figure out. But if you have that and then you're doing it with your customers, then I think that you have this really unbelievable feedback loop that helps you get the product right.
100%. That sounds great. So let me switch over to my favorite topic of retention, because usually I'll talk about how do we keep staff, how do we keep employees, how do we keep salespeople or go-to-market roles, customer service, marketing, engaged and around, because everybody knows that the highest cost in any business is going to be turnover when you have people who aren't productive, hurting your culture, and then of course the replacement cost. But really, you're on both sides of that fence, because you're also promoting like our customers. Like, we got to make sure that they're happy, that they're the ones that stick around. To our earlier conversation, obviously they're a generation, they generate revenue through referrals and things like that. When you're thinking about this as a holistic, like, first principles point of view, how do you hire the right people to keep them around so that they are keeping your customers around? And it doesn't have to be catalyst. I realize it's a bit of a meta question because you're in the business, but anybody who's got a product obviously needs to take care of their people and their customers in a way that I don't think is 100% transparent.
Yeah. I mean, hiring the right people is a loaded question. It's like, yeah, there's probably 20,000 books on how to do that in a better way. I think, like, for me, I'm just looking for like three things. Is one, will you work hard? You know, if I can get somebody that's a hard worker and has a story for that, and I think that doesn't mean in the interview you say, tell me how you work hard.
Mm-hmm.
You have to create a real way to screen for that, and I can share that if you like. But like, how I do it at least, and you figure out how to, if they can work hard. Then the second thing is are they curious? I think people that work hard, that are curious and want to learn, are like this unstoppable force. And curiosity needs to be broken into two component parts in your job. One is internal curiosity. Why is our product the best? Why do we market that way? Why is our brand that way? Why does this technical thing exist in the way that it does? And external curiosity. Why do they solve it that way? That doesn't seem like it makes sense. Help me understand why you're taking that approach. Like, why is that important to you? And what happens is the third thing I look for is, is somebody smart enough to take that intellectual curiosity and connect the dots? Mm-hmm. And it's crazy where you can have the internal curiosity to figure out, we create cold air using air conditioning, and it works this way. And the external curiosity of, they live in a hot house. And you can say to the person, hey, we have AC, and they'll be like, that's great, I'm not interested. But if you explicitly make the connection, that's the third thing. If people can make the connection between what they learn through their internal and external curiosity and help persons see that it has value in it, that's when you have this amazing employee that I think will go about finding, because they work hard and they're curious, these situations, and then connect the dots for a customer in a way that creates value. And whether you're doing that as a marketer, as an SDR, as a customer support rep, as a CSM, as an AE, no matter what, I think you're pretty much going to win. And, I might say that that's all kind of underlined with just being like a good human. Like, you can do all those things and be like, a bad person. But, if you show up every day and care about the people you work with, you're probably going to be all right. And I think that, if you can hire enough of those people, you're going to create a company where people want to stay, because hopefully the culture will be positive and encouraging and helping people grow.
So it's really interesting, some of the stuff you said. Is it okay if I challenge you a little bit on that?
Hit me. Yeah, love it. Awesome.
So everybody will tell you they want to hire somebody who's got strong work ethic, open mindset, coachable, they're curious. Everybody says that.
Yeah.
And part A of this is, okay, so what does that mean? And part B is, why does that never line up with what the job description that's posted look like?
I think job descriptions are a pain in the ass and bullshit, to be honest with you. Like, everybody just writes them to get them done. I can't remember how many job descriptions I've been asked to write, and I'm like, just go look out and find 3 more jobs, and then I just steal 90% of what's in there, and it's just like nobody wants to do it, and so you get the leftovers, I think, is partly it. And then I guess the other part of the question is like, how do you know that? Is that what you're trying to get? Like, how can you?
So I'd love your insight on how you talk to somebody. How are you? Everybody's got their own definition of what's an A player, B player. I kind of hate that term, but we know who's a fit and who's not. When you're searching for your A players and you want them to be curious or a hard worker, I mean, how are you actually? When the rubber hits the road? What questions are you asking? What sort of metrics or assessments are you using?
So for me, let's take hard work or work ethic. I believe people that have a high work ethic have an event or something in their life where they decided, I want to work hard. Like for me, I remember the day where my wife and I had a young family. We lived in a house without a dishwasher. And I remember the day I walked up to the sink and I was like, I'm just tired of dirty dishes being in the sink. And Jeff, I can tell you with almost 100% certainty, there's not been more than a handful of days in my life in the last 25 years where I've left dirty dishes in the sink. And like Matt Millen, who's this great mentor and used to be my boss, tell me how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. And how I do the dishes is how I do everything, man. It's how I mow my grass. It's how I show up for my work. It's how I close a big deal. Like, I'm not going to leave dirty dishes in the sink. And like, so I think that people that work hard know and remember and have that switch in their mind. And so like, I'll never forget, I asked one person in an interview, I was like, so listen, this is my kind of pat question. Listen, there's a story that you, your partner, your family, your friends tell about you being an insanely hard worker. Like, tell me that story. And this one kid goes, he's a young guy looking for an SDR job. He goes, listen, here's the deal. He's like, my dad grew up in Eastern Europe on a farm. He moved to Chicago and he worked really hard so that he could buy the 2 lots next to our little row house. He tore down those houses and he built a little farm in the middle of Chicago on 3 lots. And he made me wake up every morning at 4 a.m. to help him with the garden. And he made me work on Saturday and help him in the garden. And he's like, he paid me. He's like, but then one day, he's like, I was a teenager and he's like, I wanted to go do stuff with my friends. And he told his dad, hey, you know what? Like today, I'm not going to work on the farm, the garden. And he's like, so you don't have to pay me, Dad. And his dad goes, you know what? You're going to work here anyway. Just, I'm not going to pay you today. And he's like, something clicked in his mind that it's about like the value of work and like responsibility and like tying to his dad. And he kind of expanded on that little story a little bit. And I'm like, that dude knows how to work. And he's like, for the rest of my time, he's like, my attitude changed about what it meant to my dad because he told me why it was so important to him. And that person now understands how to work. And so I think that to figure out work ethic, you have to have a real, story or switch, and the person should be able to figure it out. And if they can't figure it out, if they don't know it right away, then they probably don't have it and they're making it up, or they're making some, fitting on a shoe that doesn't really fit. And so that's what I'm looking for. And then here's my favorite one though, is on the coachability, Jeff. So the way I do coachability, I'm telling you 100% accuracy. So simple is coach them in the interview and see what they do. And what I mean by that is if I'm interviewing a seller, I'll say, hey, Jeff, what's the top objection that you get? Oh, it's price. Oh, it's already got a competitor or whatever. All right, cool. Can we role play for like 2 seconds real quick and show me how you overcome that objection? And guess what the uncoachable person does? Yeah, sure. And immediately nonverbal clues of I don't want to do this. All right. Guess what the coachable person does? Yeah, wait a second. Let me grab a pen and paper and they'll put it out. All right. And then we do the little role play. No matter what they say, I'm like, that was really, really good. Like, this and this, but would you be willing for me to coach you just for a second? Oh yeah. Again, the nonverbals. Yeah, sure you can. Or,
Interesting.
oh yeah, let me get out my piece of paper and write down my notes, right? And then I coach them on something. I can always find something, right? And then I say, would you do that back for me? Like, can we do that role play again? I just want to see, like, do you want to feel how that feels to do it? Yeah. Right. And then I do it. And I'm not looking if they can do it correctly. What I'm looking for is, can I see the brain breaking? Because when the brain breaks, we have a chance to build a new neural pathway that creates a new behavior and a new way of doing things. And so that's what I see is, can I break your brain with coaching? Are you willing to let your brain be broken with coaching? And so literally in that 5-minute little exercise, I can understand if they're coachable. I can see how good they can apply coaching right in the moment. Some people just nail it. Some people, they don't get it, but they're really working to get it. And like, I love that effort. That's another thing that they're probably a hard worker. Some people do it exactly the same way that they did it before. Probably not for me and my team, right? And so that's an unbelievable way to
Love it.
look at coachability. And boy, I tell you what, it's amazing. I've seen some amazing people in those things. And here's secondarily what it does for you, especially if you're interviewing for salespeople. To a person, people thanked me for the interview and said, if this is what it's like to work at Outreach, if I can learn like this is the type of company I have to work for. And
Yeah.
you will attract better candidates if you ask great questions that really help them understand themselves. So anyway, long
I love
answer.
it. I love it. That's best answer I've gotten. So I appreciate that. What about, talk to me a little bit about, unless anything else on that topic you want to dig into? Like, that was gold.
No,
But
no,
okay. Um,
no.
Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the next 90 days. Like, people are saying lots of stuff about the economy, lots of stuff about tech, lots of stuff about everything from, what's layoffs to open roles, return to office, all that stuff. Tell me a little bit about your take on what's going to happen in the next 90 days.
Well, I hope things get better in the next 90 days. I know that.
Well, so what is, yeah, so stop there. What's off? What are you seeing that's off?
Well, personally, I have a bunch of investments that I'd like to be doing better, but listen, here's what I see in the next 90 days is, I think the world has suffered like two interesting phenomenon in the last 2.5 years. One is the pandemic, like, and we know that that's something that happens every 50 to 80 years, something similar to that. But like, the world wasn't ready. It was global. Nobody understood it. While it's cyclical, it's such a long cycle that people can't remember the last one that happened. And so they can't draw from that experience. So there's that. The second thing that happens is this economic downturn, which happens every 5 to 10 years. And people know, and I've lived through a couple of these in my short life already. And so, like, I guess it's not that short. I'm in my mid 40s, but that's something that, like, I can go back and remember what I did. I can go back and remember how to deal with it. And that was global, and it should have been planned for. It should have been understood. It might have been unexpected in the timing, but it shouldn't have been like completely like knock you off your feet, right? Maybe a couple steps back. Whereas a pandemic, you get knocked off your feet, that makes total sense, right? So I think those two things happening so quickly together have really created a very dynamic market condition that people are still trying to figure out. And it's, I think, very much started to accelerate some thinking that goes back to that confluence of events that we've talked about. If subscription economy is really the dominant way to go to market nowadays, it's like, listen, my local car wash makes $25 a month off me in a subscription. Subscription is ubiquitous now, right? And so that now that people are starting to understand the importance of the customer in the subscription economy, it's not like the old legacy software sales, the perpetual license sale, where, like, I'm going to sell you your DVD of Microsoft Office, and I'm going to come back in like 5 years and sell you another disc because you can't keep using the one that you got, right? In this, there's so many options. There's so many things that, like, I can drop you at any point for somebody that does something similar. So as that is more and more understood, then I think what ends up happening is that you have to start to see what is the ramification of how I deal with customers in an environment like that. that is different. The acquisition side of the business is 200 years old. If I go onto LinkedIn today, I bet you I can find at least 500 posts on how to start a cold call. The most nuanced of things has so much content because we are so good at it because we've done it for so long. You know what I can't find on LinkedIn today? A post that says, how does a CSM deal with a negotiation on a pricing discount in a very difficult renewal? And so, because the CSM role is also only about 20 years old, just like the subscription economy. So you got this subscription economy, which creates this huge importance on customers. You cannot win without your customers. The role that is dedicated and owns the most valuable asset in a company, the CSM role, which is the customer, that are both 20 years old. And there's a lack of real thought leadership and how to do things, at least in my, exploring of the space. And then you have this one other component, if you want to take the technical side, which is you have all of this data in a data warehouse now that's easily digestible and put into other systems that can do a bunch of work to figure out what it means. You put that all together, man, I'm telling you, something special is happening, something different is happening. And I think that those market conditions that we talked about earlier are now saying, you're hearing investors say, we need to protect the base. You're hearing the market say, you need to get more efficient. And we know it's more efficient to get revenue from customers. We're saying growth at all costs is dead. Very consistent, durable growth makes a lot more sense and is what the market and everybody is rewarding. And so I think that's where I see happening in the next 90 days is the continued acceleration of customers being a growth engine, because it's the proper way to grow with this new go-to-market motion, with this new role, in this new pressure of a market situation where you just can't throw money at acquisition anymore.
Yeah, and I read your posts on LinkedIn, and you talk a lot about the idea of making sure that people are thinking about customer service. How it was really interesting when you started first talking about it was the fact that it is so young.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pivot for? Would your advice be for companies who are looking at what's next? What do I do in the next 90, maybe even 180 days or more to preserve my cash and look towards profitability? Is the pivot pour money, buy Catalyst, right? For sure, but and sounds like actually that's a pretty good idea. But is it put more effort into your hiring into CS roles, training CS roles, transferring people who've been in a good successful sales role into a CS role? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I can present to you several dichotomies.
We're all about opinions here. Don't worry. You can throw anything at the wall.
Right. Well, I think it's more interesting to talk about a situation that somebody needs to resolve than necessarily my opinion on how to resolve it. So let's look at the book of business coin. All right. A company has to resolve and figure out, why do they every year look at a book of business that a salesperson has and says, how do we shrink it? How do we get more revenue out of less accounts? I know we'll make sure that the AE has less accounts, and so they can spend more time with those accounts. And everybody's like, oh yes, that makes sense. We celebrate that. The other side of the book of business coin is the post-sale side. Every year we say, how can we give a CSM more accounts, but have them retain those accounts even better? So we want to get, and you retain accounts better, that's more revenue. So what we're saying there is more accounts, which equals less time equals more revenue. You can't have two roles where you say less time equals more revenue and more time equals more revenue. That is a dichotomy that you must stop being hypocritical about, in my opinion. And so I think that that's really one of those things that in the next 90 days, you better figure out. If you're an executive, you better figure it out. Now, I understand that we need to be more efficient, and I'm not letting people off the hook of how do we get more efficient so that a CSM can handle more accounts. But if you go look at all of the layoffs and everything, at least in my anecdotal, watching the flows, talking to friends, post-sales roles got hammered because they aren't tied to revenue. And pre-sales roles got either the same or got the savings from the post-sales roles because we have to get more revenue in the door. And I really think that that's like a weird approach because you haven't resolved the dichotomy of your hypocriticalness of saying the same different things out of the same mouth.
And I imagine that gets picked up on 100% by the people who are getting these messages. Your sales and CS people, right? They're like, "What's going on?"
Friends in there that are like being nice is what I see.
And so you and I talked earlier. Finding empathetic people for these CS roles is another trait that you're looking to hire for, train for. I mean, I think it sounds obvious. Oh, sure, we want people who are talking to customers to be empathetic. You brought it up in a way that seems like it's more strategic.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if you can help somebody be empathetic. I
Okay.
think they can help themselves be empathetic. I think you can put them in situations where they have to learn and grow in it in themselves. But like, I don't think that I can help. I don't think I can get somebody to be empathetic. I can create a situation that helps them get there, but
Right.
you're either
Create a
there or
force
you don't.
behind
It's one of those innate human things, right?
you.
It's like the same thing of uh, like I just watched that whole Jeffrey Dahmer thing a month ago. Like nobody could make him into that. He was that or he wasn't that. You know what I mean? So what I think the missing piece though is, Jeff, is empathy is an emotion. It is an approach. It is a state of mind. It is not a result. And so if I'm going to aim my empathy at something, what is it going to create that's a result? And I think that the thing it should create is a moment of impact. Again, the definition is super important. It's like it's an event where the customer gets meaningful value that they appreciate and they attribute and credit it to you and your product. And if you can create that, then I think what you end up doing is you find an outlet for the empathy that helps you feel good because I am with my customer, helps your customer feel good because I'm getting something out of this relationship. And it makes there a point to the empathy. Because empathy without point, I mean, I don't know. I should figure out the rest of that sentence. I don't know
We're
what it
back to the
means.
cup of coffee and making friends.
Yeah, right. I say empathy. So I heard recently when I'm a big basketball fan, and they were saying that like loyalty unreturned is just being crazy. And like, like, hey, I'm going to be loyal to the team, but if they're not loyal to me, then I'm just being crazy. And I would say like empathy without a point is just, you being a yes person and you're a people pleaser. And we all know people pleasers don't go anywhere. There we go. Empathy without a point is people pleasing. Lock it down.
Bingo. You heard it here first. The and you can't fake it, can you?
I think you
Because
can.
when you're on with somebody in a customer service call, when they're reading off a script, it's worse than if they just didn't say it at all.
I agree, but I still think you can fake empathy.
Yeah,
I think you can still fake empathy. Sure, yeah.
pull the wool over somebody's eyes and pretend like they think they're being cared about.
Yeah, that's right. I've walked a mile in your shoes, but I haven't. I understand your situation, but I don't. I act like I care, but I don't. Do I really? I think you can
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of marriages in the country that show that you can fake that for a while.
True. But I think like sales pipelines, we all know that we really know there's some truth there. That if we're to be honest with ourselves, I don't really believe you.
Yeah, I think the fruit will tell you the person, right? Like if a person really is empathetic, you're going to see the fruits of empathy. If they're not, then you're going to see something else, right?
Right.
But I think in the short term and in a meeting, I think you can fake it. But like I call it a weakness, call it a strength. Like I believe the best in people. I would never go into a situation thinking that.
So at the risk of using the same bit twice, how would you screen somebody for empathy?
So I look at empathy in this way, which is if I really care about you and care about your situation, I want you to get excited about the things I'm excited about for you, right? And if I can't get you excited about the things that I'm excited about, then do I really understand? Do I really empathize with you or not? Because if you're telling me everything and I'm getting, whoa, yes, I got you. I figured it out. I got the solution. I know what you need to do. And then I can't help them to get excited. Maybe I'm off, right? And so
Mhm.
I call that the transfer of passion. And so again, I'll go back to I'm giving all my interview tips, but like for transfer of passion, I have a specific way that I search for it. And again, I'll tell you another awesome story about it. Is I'm like, listen, tell me, Jeff, tell me something that you are just so passionate about. It's like your hobby, your profession, and your personal life, something that like just gives you a buzz, man. Like if you could do it all day, every day, it'd be your thing. And I had this one guy tell me, oh man, interpretive dance. And whatever they say, my answer is the same. I'm like, okay, I'm not that into interpretive dance. Like, get me excited about it. And then this young man was like, all right. He's like, imagine you're on a stage with 20 other people, and for 8 months, like you've worked on like what angle your fingers at, and every stomp it's as loud as 20 people, but it sounds like one. And every arm movement is completely choreographed. And every time that you do something blind, the person that you need to help you and be there for you so that move is complete is there for you every single time. And imagine after 8 months, you get in front of 1,000 people and show them this level of synchronicity and preparation and precision. And he's like, and when you do it, and he's kind of painting the whole picture. At the end, I was like, damn it, sign me up for an interpretive dance class. And so that's the thing. Like, so I thought, if that kid is that good at getting me excited about interpretive dance, how good could he be if he understands what the customer needs and gets excited about a solution? And so then we just need to tune him into making sure that he's picking up the right signals. But like, I think that, the way you look for empathy is to see, can I get you excited about what I'm excited about? Because a solution born out of empathy is something you should be excited about.
Awesome. And I think we're all now going to sign up for your course on how to interview candidates. Just give us the link.
You know what, Jeff, I think it's a funny topic, but like, here's the deal is nobody just takes a second and says, what do I care about in an interview? People do that, but then they ask horrible questions. And, just like sales, interviewing is sales, like I'm trying to discover what's true about this person so I can figure out if they're a good fit or not. But like, if you just sit down for a second, I remember I did this with my buddy, Alex Kremer, and we came up with like, here's how we're going to interview to figure out if people like it or not. And, I remember we were trying to figure out grit. And so we would say, hey, tell me something, that you're really, knowledgeable about, like whatever. And they would say something, and no matter what they said, I'd say, I'm not really buying it. And the minute that I say that, like, do they fight back? Do they have grit or do they not? Right. And so like, that's just a simple thing of sitting down and being like, what does it look like demonstrated in an interview format? And then how can I create that situation? So interviewing can be really fun if you have really great questions that help you see what a person's about. But most people dread the interview because they have crappy questions. They know they're just going to be like, I think I like that person. And they know it's not really built on anything other than an impression.
It's hard work. I got to put time into this in my busy day. I'm wearing 10 different hats, and I got to go interview somebody, and then I also have to be thoughtful about the questions. I have empathy for hiring managers. It's hard.
Yeah.
All right, I would love to. We got some people on the chat. I don't know I think you can see it, and if anybody wants to throw in some questions in there as we sort of close it out, I want to ask, a couple more. Actually, it's more of a conceptual question, but in all of this we're talking about, there's a lot of myths that go along with current hiring, current management of people. You have a particular one myth that you'd love to debunk?
A myth about leading people?
Yeah, but how things are done. Like, for example, I was talking to a CETO last night about their hiring process, and they say, the SaaS world's it's become like the railroads. It's like, this is how it's done. This is how it's always been done. We're not going to deviate. So we're not going to hire anybody who doesn't have SaaS experience. And they were talking about debunking that idea that that's That's a requirement. That was sort of their world. Anything that you can think of that bubbles up that you're like, oh, if people would just stop thinking that way.
I don't know. That's a great question. I do agree with the SaaS thing. I didn't have any SaaS experience, and it worked out all right for me. So selling's selling, I think. Building's building. It's just there's a couple of little intricacies no matter what you're doing. I can't think of any right now, but if something pops in my head, I'll think about it. I'll share.
Okay, cool. Well, now I'm gonna have to fill some airtime now. Expecting you to talk some more. So we talked about the first 90 days. Anything economic wise you're seeing that over the next year? Are we headed for back to normal? Because it seems like the news is telling us the market's had its best year since 1976, but we're seeing sort of this post pandemic bump, especially in tech and SaaS. Sort of back to normal after another year. Return to office is a thing.
I think the companies that are providing solutions that have meaningful value will be fine. I think the point solutions that it's hard to draw a direct line to how it's helping the bottom line are going to have a tough time. Like there's a lot of tools that are kind of no-brainers, a lot of rules that are kind of no-brainers, like you have to have them, but like I think people will always be susceptible to their product getting churned off of or losing their job if they can't figure out how to tie themselves to revenue. So that's literally what my mission is at Catalyst, is to make sure that post-sales teams are tied to revenue in multiple meaningful ways. And so I think that's what I think is you're going to continue to be hurt and struggle if you can't get there, because I think that everything's cyclical. We used to have efficient growth was the thing that everybody cared about. Then it was just grow. Who cares how much money you're spending growing? Now we're back to efficient growth again. And so we'll move to the crazy growth thing again, where everybody's got, money to burn just to grow, right? And figure it out later. But I think we're probably in a good cyclical thing right now.
Sounds healthy. I'm hearing similar things. Return to fundamentals, bring real value. Seems like you're really with Catalyst in a enviable spot. So nice work.
Well, it's good to have a cycle, because unabated, irresponsible growth teaches us things that make responsible growth easier and better. Mm-hmm. And so, but if you're just always trying to go responsibly, you're never going to try something new and different and really go for it. That takes some investment to figure out, right? So, yeah. Oh, I see my man Noah. Triple tap SDR. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
What this one?
What drew me into a sales role? I've always been in sales. So when I was 7 years old, there's a story that I loaded up. I was at my uncle's house in Delaware. I loaded up a wagon full of his kids' old toys and went around to the houses in the neighborhood and tried to get people to swap out their new toys for the old toys they didn't want to play with. So, listen, I think that ultimately what I love about sales is I love to work with smart people on how to fix problems and help people. Like that's what I love to do. And I think, in sales, I usually get to talk to smart people. There's usually a complex problem that takes some thinking and creativity to figure out, and the solution of which really helps people out. And so, I don't know if I'm empathy without results, people pleaser type, but I definitely like to help people.
Nice. Yeah. Let's see. And I got one other one.
Oh, Tyson Hall, the greatest sales leader north of the border in Canada. My man, where do you see client value in the retention process? Is that where? So I feel. Where do I see client value in the retention process? So listen, I think that retention is an interesting thing from this standpoint. Is retention should be a byproduct of other things, not a purpose. And when I hear a CSM say, my job is to retain customers, I know things are already out of whack. Mm. It's like me saying, as a husband, my job is to make sure I don't get divorced. Like that doesn't work. I'm going to come at things the wrong way. And so I don't know if I see a lot of value in the retention process. What I see is if you provide value, you will have a great retention process. And so I would say I would kind of flip it around and you know, work on those moments of impact that really help people see the value. And then the retention is honestly a byproduct. It's kind of like NPS. I think NPS is like a metric that gives you false confidence, or it depends on how I feel in the day of how I do. There's so many factors that go into it. And so like, I don't know if I'm a big NPS advocate because I think it simplifies too much a super complex issue that can be solved in a way better way than having people enter in 7 on something that pops up in the product. So
do you see any reliable leading indicators?
Yeah, I think usage, I think adoption, I think that time to value, I think that like your ability to get resources from them shows a lot of leading metrics. Like if I needed to get the head of engineering on a call and I can't get them on a call, that says a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to my buddy John over at ZoomInfo, and he's on the client onboarding team, and they've really focused on really just spending a lot more time getting people to adopt and use the platform, which again sounds like it's obvious, but so often it's like, well, here's our knowledge base, and here's our weekly email about things you can do with the platform. I imagine that's a big part of your team as well.
Yeah. I think that's onboarding. I mean, I hate to keep going back to it, but onboarding is about impact. Like what we do is we say, in order for them to use a product, here's the milestones we need them to go through. And if they use the product, they'll retain it. And that's the broken equation that I think we need to change. It's not about using the product. It's about me getting meaningful value that I appreciate, that I subscribe to your product. Now, usage is required to do that, but usage in and of itself won't do that. And so I think we have to change the conversation of what we are trying to do. And when we do that, then we can architect these go-to-market customer journeys that really help people get quickly to where they want to be. So
I don't think you can say that enough times. So I appreciate you sticking with that, because it really does change the equation from top down.
Yeah.
When your mission is, getting that value, getting that, those moments, as opposed to keeping people around, I would imagine that your team is much more invested in the product and they really enjoy being on your team, as opposed to, your standard, well, I'm just doing the same thing that everybody's been doing for 20 years and I'll keep my head down, eyes up for a new job somewhere else, right? You probably have killer retention.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think retention is like wiping your nose and hoping your cold goes away. You're dealing with
I was thinking retention for your staff, but yeah.
If
you're focused on that, you're not paying attention.
If your solution is we're going to retain our customers, you're not dealing with the illness.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Anything else you want to add? We kind of right up against our time, and I don't have anything else that you want to field one more from
Kevin. How do you see the collaboration between sales and marketing? I see it done very poorly in a lot of companies that I've had to go in and help and in sales process. Listen, I think that by nature, role and department specialization create a siloed effect that lets you say, if I can just work in my area, then I don't have to think about the other parts of things. And that's partly what specialization is supposed to do, is to help you think in a line and get really, really good at what you're doing. But the danger in that is you see what you see is where we have like, well, listen, these marketing materials don't care. The leads I get from marketing suck and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's why you have to have like these threads that go all throughout the customer journey that really help you figure out, like, what are we rallying around? Are we rallying around like leads and MQLs? Are we rallying around pipeline generated? Are we rallying around closed won revenue? If you are, I might say that that's a thread that some people feel disconnected from. But if we're rallying around, like, in our first 30 days, we want a customer to accomplish this, because this means that they're going to really love us, and they're on their trip to becoming an advocate. And we love creating advocates. That's something I think everybody can identify, and a thread that you can pull through an entire customer journey. And then that thread is those threads are what create alignment. And so if you don't have those threads that go all the way through, and I think a thread that goes from sales to marketing and ends isn't a strong thread. A thread that goes from sale or from marketing to sales to onboarding to CS to retention and all that is a strong thread. And so that's what I see it as poorly, but I think it's because there's just not enough strong threads that go through all the departments that are kind of the rallying cry for the company.
Awesome. Right on. All right. Well, I guess we'll kind of run up against our time. Mark, I appreciate you coming on, everybody. This has been Mark Kosoglow from Catalyst. If you have not checked it out, catalyst.io is the way to really increase your customer service platform, or it's a platform for, I said that terribly. You did it better. Just rewatch the video.
Make your customers your growth engine.
That's right. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it, man. See you.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate all the comments. Have a good one.